laryngotracheitis. Infectious laryngotracheitis. Laryngo means larynx and trachea. Laryngotracheitis, or it is also sometimes called as avian diphtheria. Avian diphtheria. Diphtheria. Here, the diphtheria indicates formation of pseudofibrinous membrane or fibrinous pseudomembrane or Kruppus membrane, as it happens in the human infants, diphtheria. So, the virus belongs to Herpes viridae family. Virus belongs to Herpes viridae family and subfamily Alpha herpes virinae. Alpha herpes virinae. Genus is Iltovirus. Iltovirus. This name is derived from the short form of infectious laryngotracheitis (ILT). Genus is Iltovirus and species is Gallid herpes virus (GALLID). Gallid herpes virus. It is a DNA virus. ILT virus is a DNA virus. The primary host is chicken. Primary host is chicken, and disease affects all age groups. And most characteristic signs or most clinical signs appear in the adult birds. The pheasants, turkeys of young age, and ducks also show the infection. They show the infection, but clinical disease is not that pronounced. So pheasants, turkeys, and chicks also show the disease. The virus can be isolated on embryonated eggs and cell culture. Embryonated eggs and cell culture, which will later on. Transmission is by the infection of upper respiratory tract and ocular route. Upper respiratory tract and ocular route. The the virus may be transmitted through feed and water. The feed and water. The infected bird, clinically infected or the subclinically infected, both. The infected birds are the source of infection. Virus can also be mechanically transmitted. Virus can also be mechanically transmitted by fomites, the rodents, and farm workers. Fomites, rodents, and workers. There is no vertical transmission, only horizontal transmission. There is no vertical transmission, only horizontal or lateral transmission is seen. The incubation period of disease is 6 to 12 days. So that means the clinical signs will take almost a week to a little more than a week. Say 6 days to 12 days. It will take almost a week and little more than that to appear once the infection has taken place. Now study the pathology, discuss the pathology of disease. The clinical signs, the first important point is the total course of disease is around 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days. Total course of disease in general is around 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days. But in severe cases, there may be a total course of 4 weeks, almost a month. Almost a month, we may see this disease running in a farm. If there is no action taken, up to 4 weeks. The disease causes acute respiratory problems or acute respiratory disease. ILT virus causes acute acute respiratory disease, there is there is expelling of exudate by coughing. Physical sign of this disease. The chicken is seen, the adult chicken especially, not only the young ones, but definitely adults show it more. The bird will be coughing, and on coughing, exudate will be coming out. There is nasal discharge, moist rales, respiratory rales, nasal discharge, respiratory rales, and coughing and gasping. Coughing and gasping. On coughing, the exudate comes out, which may be blood stained mucus or sometimes frank blood. Sometimes frank blood. Coughing of the blood. Hmm? If you remember, the coughing of blood was called as hemoptysis. Hemoptysis. Chicken showing hemoptysis is a classical sign of the ILT in the severe form, definitely. Hmm. There is dyspnea. There is dyspnea. There is dyspnea in the birds. In milder forms, or when the virus is showing not completely fulminant disease, it is described as mild enzootic form. Mild enzootic form, like epidemic, mild epidemic. Mild enzootic form. There is unthriftiness. Unthriftiness means birds will not grow properly. Unthriftiness, poor egg production, poor egg production, watery eyes, conjunctivitis, conjunctivitis, swelling of infraorbital sinus, swelling of infraorbital sinus, mild tracheitis, mild tracheitis. In some cases, not all, but some birds will show persistent nasal discharge and hemorrhagic conjunctivitis. And some cases will show persistent nasal discharge and hemorrhagic conjunctivitis. The morbidity of disease varies from 90 to 100%. Once it enters the farm, at some or the other point, most birds will be affected. Morbidity varies from 90 to 100%, while mortality varies between 5 to 70%. 5 to 70%, and generally 10 to 20% is very common. Generally 10 to 20% mortality is very common. It all depends on the virulence of virus and also the host factors, Milder the form, stronger the bird, lesser will be the mortality. Cross lesions are mostly seen in larynx and trachea. They are mostly seen in larynx and trachea, and obviously the disease is called laryngotracheitis. It is also common to find the lesions in conjunctiva and sometimes complete respiratory tract. So there may be conjunctivitis also, and sometimes right from the nasal mucosa up to the lungs, we may find the lesions. The the changes in trachea and larynx include mild changes like excessive mucus, the changes in the larynx and trachea may be mild changes like presence of excessive mucus, or we may say catarrhal laryngotracheitis. To a severe hemorrhagic laryngotracheitis, or diphtheritic laryngotracheitis. So, according to the virulence of virus, we may see simple mucus, that is catarrhal laryngotracheitis, or it may be as severe as hemorrhagic laryngotracheitis, and sometimes Croup or fibrinous laryngotracheitis or diphtheritic laryngotracheitis. Hmm. The severe changes always begin as the catarrhal inflammation. There will be initial catarrhal inflammation. There will be presence of uh, degeneration, necrosis, and hemorrhage as the disease progress. When initially there will be lot of mucus. In fact, the book mentions it as mucoid because it is not true mucus. It is exudate with presence of mucus. So sometimes it is also called as mucoid. So there is excessive mucus, then excessive mucus, exudate containing mucus, but it slowly progress and the degeneration, necrosis, and hemorrhage become pronounced. As this goes on, the after hemorrhages, the diphtheritic changes are commonly seen. Diphtheritic changes are commonly seen, and there may be formation of mucoid cast inside the trachea. Like we have seen the formation of cast in urine. There is also formation of cast inside the trachea. And why it is happening? The mucus or the fibrin or all the debris that coagulates inside the trachea, and this blocks the respiratory passage. So there may be mucus extending the entire length of trachea. In severe cases, the tracheal hemorrhages form the blood cast or blood mixed mucus and necrotic tissue containing cast. In severe cases, the tracheal hemorrhages result in bloody cast. That means throughout the length of trachea, we find clot of blood. And there may be blood mixed with mucus and necrotic tissue forming the cast. Mucus and necrotic tissue. As the disease progresses, or if the virus is severe, very virulent, then the inflammation spreads to lungs and even up to air sacs. Air sac. In the mild forms of disease, we see edema and congestion of conjunctiva, and infraorbital sinus with catarrhal tracheitis. Microscopic examination Microscopic examination shows loss of goblet cells, infiltration of inflammatory cells, loss of goblet cells, infiltration of inflammatory cells. Later stages, we see epithelial cell enlargement, loss of loss of cilia in trachea, loss of cilia in the tracheal epithelium, edema, and syncytia formation. Edema and underline this syncytia formation of multinucleated cells. Syncytia formation. The tracheal epithelium will show formation of multinucleated cells. As the disease progresses, the lymphocytes, plasma cells, and histiocytes enter the mucosa and submucosa. Now, mononuclear cells with lymphocytes, plasma cells, and histiocytes. Histiocytes means macrophage-like cells. They come to the mucosa and submucosa. There is extensive destruction and desquamation of mucosa. And this results in only a thin layer of basal cells. Only thin layer of basal cells are seen lining the trachea. Only a thin layer of basal cells are seen lining the trachea, and any epithelial covering is missing. The normal epithelia is now missing. The blood vessels in the lamina propria are exposed to the lumen. The blood vessels in the lamina propria are exposed to the lumen. There is the rupture of capillaries and hemorrhages. There is rupture of capillaries and hemorrhages. Hmm? In the later stages, still later stages, say 3 to 4 days post-infection, intranuclear inclusion bodies are seen. Intranuclear inclusion bodies are seen in the remaining epithelial cells. In the remaining epithelial cells, and uh, when the desquamation is extensive, the inclusion body containing cells are lost. If the desquamation is extensive, the inclusion body containing cells are lost. If we see the pathogenesis, virus infects and replicates in larynx and trachea. Apart from that, virus infects and replicates in larynx and trachea. Apart from that, also in conjunctiva and sinuses, and may also reach up to air sac and lungs if very severe up to air sac and lungs. The cytolytic infection. Cytolytic means where virus replication kills the cell. The maximum cytolytic infection occurs in trachea. Maximum is in trachea. So virus, while the cytolytic infection is going on, this cytolytic infection is going on, the virus actually appears in all the oral and nasal secretion, not oral, of course, nasal secretions. Yes, with saliva, nasal secretion mixed with saliva also infected. Virus appears there. So this virus, while replication causes the destruction of the tracheal epithelium, the tracheal epithelium is lost, exposing the submucosa. Exposing the submucosa, and this exposed submucosal capillaries are ruptured due to inflammation and breathing. Breathing also ruptures the capillaries. These, these capillaries are ruptured because of the inflammation as well as the breathing of the bird, and therefore a lot of hemorrhages are seen in trachea. A lot of hemorrhages are seen in the trachea. Slowly the infection, slowly the fibrin appears and forms a pseudomembranous covering. Slowly the fibrin appears and forms a pseudomembranous covering. If extensive hemorrhage or extensive fibrinous exudation, then trachea is blocked by the cast. If there is extensive hemorrhage or extensive fibrinous covering, then trachea is blocked by the cast and bird gets asphyxiated and dies. Asphyxiation, asphyxiation and the death by suffocation. Death by suffocation. If the bird survives, virus reaches the trigeminal ganglia and remains hidden there for relapse. If the bird survives, then virus reaches the trigeminal ganglia and remains there for relapse. Then diagnosis of the disease is based on clinical signs, especially the bloody expectoration, and post-mortem lesions of hemorrhagic or Grupus laryngotracheitis. Bloody expectoration means you see if we have cough syrups are two types of one is antitussive cough syrup that suppresses the cough, say containing the anti-allergic, and one is expectorant cough syrup will induce more formation of the cuff, or more formation of the exudate trachea, profuse exudation from trachea to clear out the infection there. So coughing up of mucus or coughing up of anything from the um, um, the respiratory tract is called as expectoration. Expectoration, and we may say hemoptysis, expecto or hemoptysis with coughing or bloody expectoration. The word is hemoptysis with cough or bloody expectoration in the bird. This is very important sign. Then postmortem lesions of hemorrhagic tracheitis, Crupus tracheitis, and even formation of cast, bloody or Crupus cast, bloody or Crupus cast. Histopathologically, histopathologically, intranuclear inclusion bodies in respiratory and conjunctival epithelium. Intranuclear inclusion bodies in respiratory and conjunctival epithelium are seen. These are very, very important. The observation. In fact, one book has mentioned it as pathognomonic lesion for ILT. If we see intranuclear inclusion body in respiratory and conjunctival epithelium, this is almost pathognomonic for ILT. However, other disease like adenovirus disease may also show this. Hmm. So there is some controversy regarding this. So better not to mention it as pathognomonic of ILT. Isolation is on the 9 to 12 days old chicken embryo. Isolation is on 9 to 12 days old chicken embryos. The suspected samples are inoculated in the egg by chorioallantoic membrane route. By chorioallantoic membrane route, and infected egg shows plaques. Infected egg cam or infected eggs chorioallantoic membrane shows formation of opaque plaques, plaquees. Now, this opaque plaque is like a patch. Chorioallantoic membrane is transparent jelly-like membrane. It is very slippery jelly-like membrane, and it is transparent. And when the virus is infecting there, the virus is growing there, it will form opaque patches. It will not be transparent in that area. It will turn opaque, and this area is called as plaque. hmm, with the this rounded plaques are found there. And it can also be isolated on cell culture or on the chicken embryo lymphocytes or uh, chicken embryo lymphocytes and chicken kidney cells. Other tests includes immunofluorescence test, immunoperoxidase test, immunofluorescence test, immunoperoxidase test, PCR. PCR is very good for acute as well as latent infection in the trigeminal ganglia. Latent infection in the trigeminal ganglia. PCR is very, very important for that. ELISA on the exudate or the blood can be very helpful. Then in situ hybridization can be very helpful. Then serological test like AGID, the ELISA on blood, and virus neutralization test are also very important. AGID, virus neutralization test, and ELISA on the blood are very important. Please remember that PCR can detect the latent infection in trigeminal ganglia as well as acute infection. Then ELISA can be done on the exudate from trachea, and ELISA can be done to see the antibodies in the blood as a serological test. Differential diagnosis is from diphtheritic pox, wet pox. Diphtheritic pox, we also call that wet pox. Then Newcastle disease, especially the NVND, where sometimes hemorrhagic tracheitis may be seen. Then avian influenza, infectious bronchitis, adenovirus, infectious bronchitis, adenovirus, and also aspergillosis, which I will be trying to cover soon. Aspergillosis. Okay, any doubt, any confusion till now? Any doubt or confusion? Okay. When are your final exams? Can anybody reply, please? When are your final exams?
No.
Okay, no idea till now. Okay, all right. I think it will be on time, but some idea, some date has come or not. That's what I was asking. Okay, so let's go ahead to next disease. Next disease is Marek's disease. Marek's disease. Marek apostrophe S. Marek's disease. It is very important disease. It is one of the earliest recognized disease. It was uh, uh, discovered first by Dr. Joseph Marek. That's why it is called as Marek's disease. Dr. Joseph 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 Marek in 1907. And he called this disease as polyneuritis. He called this disease as polyneuritis. But later on, different excuse me. Later on, different forms of disease infecting the the rhizoid organ for tumor formation, etc., have been found. The virus belongs to alpha herpes virini family, herpes virini family, and genus is Mardi virus, Mardi, Mardi virus, Marek disease, short form. Like here, there we had Ilto virus, here we have Mardi virus. Genus is Mardi virus, and the serotype, it has got serotype 1, 2, and 3. Serotype 1, 2, and 3, and they all are herpes virus infecting the birds. The serotype 1 is the prototype virus, which is known for causing the typical Marek disease, mild form, virulent form, very virulent form, very virulent plus form. Hmm. So, if I say what are the pathotypes of Marek disease virus? The pathotype of Marek disease virus is mild Marek's disease virus, small m, capital MDV, mild Marek disease virus. Then virulent Marek disease virus, small v in bracket, and then MDV, virulent Marek disease virus. Then there is very virulent MDV, VVMDV, very virulent MDV. And in not long back, not very long back, there was also discovery of very virulent plus MDV. Very virulent plus MDV, that means it is even more virulent than what was thought to be very virulent. Very virulent plus MDV. Okay. This is a DNA virus with linear double-stranded DNA genome, linear double-stranded DNA genome, and it is enveloped. It is enveloped. It is cell-associated herpes virus. Almost all herpes virus are cell associated. All viruses are cell associated, but this virus is typically cell associated herpes virus with the tropism towards the lymphocyte origin cells. Tropism towards the lymphocyte origin cells. The uh, Before going ahead with uh, the disease, some basic biology of this virus is to be discussed. Some basic biology of this virus is to be discussed. One of the important point is that it causes different types means infection is same. The infection of the cells of host may have different effects, may show different course of pathology. The infected cells may show different course of pathology, and because of the pathogenesis also. So, type of infection it causes is called as productive infection, also called as cytolytic infection, productive infection or cytolytic infection. Now, there are two types of productive infection: fully productive infection and productive restrictive infection. Fully productive infection and productive restrictive infection. Fully productive infection results in formation of large number of enveloped complete virus particles. Fully productive infection results in formation of large number of enveloped fully formed infective virus particles. Fully formed infective virus particles, enveloped and fully formed infective virus particles. This infection occurs in the feather follicle epithelium of chicken. This type of infection occurs in the feather follicle epithelium of chicken, and that is why the survey of Marek's disease in field cases is done by collecting the feather follicle epithelium. We pluck the feather and collect the epithelium from that. Okay. In productive restrictive infection, the most virion produced are non-enveloped and non-infectious. Only very few complete virus particles are formed. In productive restrictive infection, most virions are non-enveloped and non-infectious. Only very few infectious particles are formed. Okay. One more point. When there is productive infection, intranuclear inclusion bodies are seen. Intranuclear inclusion bodies are seen, especially in the feather follicle epithelium. In the feather follicle epithelium. Then another type of infection is cytolytic infection. Not cytolytic. Another type of infection is the latent infection. Fully productive infection was cytolytic infection. Please don't confuse. Huh? Another type of infection is latent infection. In latent infection, there is presence of viral DNA, in the cell, but it does not transcribe the proteins. It does not transcribe the proteins. The latency and the one more type of infection is there. Next type, transforming infection. This latent infection is a stage of transforming infection. In this latent infection, the cells are infected, but the virus does not show any synthesis of viral proteins or anything, just remains hidden there. The important associated cells are CD4 plus and CD8 plus, I mean to say CD4 positive and CD8 positive T cells and some B cells. The important cells associated with latency are CD4 positive and CD8 positive T cells and B cells. At this point, the virus is just residing hidden inside the cells. Then there is transforming infection. There is transforming infection. Only serotype 1 of Marek disease virus shows this transforming infection. Serotype 1 of Marek disease virus shows this transforming infection. They express, the infected cells express the Marek's disease associated antigen. Marek's disease tumor associated surface antigen. Marek's disease tumor associated surface antigen. The cells express Marek's disease tumor associated surface antigen, in short form MATSA MATSA. In short form MATSA MATSA. Hmm? Marek's disease tumor associated surface antigen. The, the Marek's disease lymphomas are resulting from the transforming infection. They are resulting from the transforming infection. This is generally the next stage of the latent infection. The uh, the cells, the transformed cells are generally the latent cells only, like CD4 positive T cells, even CD8 positive T cells. Okay, host range. Host range. It includes chicken. Host range includes chicken. It is the natural host of Marek disease. Hmm. However, other species like quail, turkey, and pheasants have also shown the infection. Also shown the infection. In quails, feather follicle epithelium can show presence of virus. In quails, feather follicle epithelium can show presence of virus. In ducks, sparrows, partridges, pigeon, peafowl, no disease. But ducks will show antibodies. Ducks will show antibodies to Marek's disease virus, but infection is not demonstrated in ducks. In turkeys, it can show rare outbreaks. In turkeys, it can show rare outbreaks. Turkeys are very susceptible to herpes viruses. Okay. Transmission transmission is by the direct and indirect contact between the birds. Direct and indirect contact between the birds. The virus is spread by the air, especially the dust containing the feather follicle, the shed of feather follicle epithelial cells, especially the dust containing the shed of the shed of feather follicle epithelial cells. The keratinizing layer is very resistant. The keratinizing layer is very resistant, and in that virus survives for long, and by air it is carried to very long distance. Especially the feather and dander. Dander is that white, or I should say, dander is like dandruff, a small white deposit at the base of the hair and feather. We see that dander. This spread this virus a lot. The dust of poultry house is a major source of spread of this disease. Is a major source of spread of this disease. Then fomites, rodents, farm workers, all vehicles, all can spread it. Fomites, rodents, farm workers, all can uh, uh, spread this disease. Even the insects are known to carry this disease. Insects like beetles. Beetles are known to carry this disease. Marek disease virus is only horizontally transmitted. There is no vertical transmission. Marek disease virus is not vertically transmitted. Hmm? There are uh, many reasons associated with the pathology. You may not find the common pathological changes in the field. The host factors, the virulence of virus, the vaccination status, management status, all are important for the development of disease. So what you see in the field. So before going ahead with anything, till now, any doubt? Any doubt till now? Anybody wants to discuss anything? Hmm? Okay. So we discussed the pathogenesis in very short. So there are different stages of pathogenesis. So first stage is early productive restrictive infection. Early productive restrictive infection. It occurs in the visceral organs like spleen, bursa, thymus. It occurs in the uh, visceral organs like spleen, bursa, thymus. Primary targets are the B cells, hmm, and also some T cells, B cells and T cells. And because of this cytolytic infection, productive restrictive cytolytic infection, these organs show transient atrophy. So these lymphoid organs, say bursa, thymus, spleen, they start showing the atrophy, hmm, of the organ. Then there is a latent infection. Then there is latent infection. So once the infection takes place, the virus spreads to the visceral organs, especially the macrophages carry them. Macrophages carry this virus to the different lymphoid organs, and there it shows early productive restrictive infection, and there is atrophy of lymphoid organ. Major target are B cells and definitely the CD4 and 8 type of the T cells. Then after this, there is a latency phase. The virus remains latent, hidden inside the cells, and the major cell associated with latency are the CD4 positive T cells. Apart from this CD4 positive T cells, other two types are definitely CD8 positive, and B cells also show latency. So then the latent phase comes where the virus remains inside the cell without formation of any transcript, any protein. Then comes the second phase of cytolytic infection. Second phase of cytolytic infection. This phase also coincides with development of tumors. Also coincides with development of tumors. This phase may not occur. hmm, May or may not occur only very weak birds, very susceptible birds, or very virulent MD or very virulent plus MD shows this. Very virulent MD or very virulent plus MD shows this. And this infection this infection occurs in the lymphoid organs and the tissues of epithelial origin. This infection occurs in the lymphoid organs and tissues of epithelial origin like kidneys, pancreas, glands like adrenal gland, proventriculus, etc. Hmm? So because of the second phase of cytolytic infection, if it occurs, especially with very weak birds or very virulent virus, this leads to permanent immunosuppression. Bird will either die of this infection or development of tumor, or even before that because of the secondary infection. This leads to permanent immunosuppression. Then there is the stage of development of lymphomas. Stage of development of lymphomas. Now, in this stage, the latent virus leads to lymphoproliferative changes. Hmm? This is the ultimate response of this disease, ultimate pathological. And there is one more type of infection. So this is ultimate pathological response of this disease. It leads to development of lymphomas, and both T and B cells are present in the lymphoma, but maximum cells are CD4 positive cells. Maximum cells, transformed tumor cells, are CD4 positive cells. Of course, other types CD8 etc. all are transformed. Numerous CD type cells have been transformed, but maximum population is of CD4 positive cells. Hmm. The lymphoma is, however, not okay. Histology of lymphoma later on we will see, but lymphoma comprises of the tumor and inflammatory cells both. Tumor and inflammatory cells both. Therefore, the the cell population of lymphoma is non-uniform. Cell population of lymphoma is non-uniform. Hmm? The there are many numerous factors associated with it. Then there is cytolytic infection in feather follicle epithelium. There is cytolytic infection in feather follicle epithelium. At some point during this phase, this uh, initial productive restrictive infection, then spread to the different organs, second cytolytic phase, or even development of lymphoma. All the during this phase, the virus also reaches the feather follicle epithelium. This is the primary site of replication of virus to form fully fully infective complete virion particles. Feather follicle epithelium is the major site for formation of fully formed fully formed infective complete virion particles. So the the lymphocytes transmit the virus where the infected lymphocytes take the virus to the feather follicle epithelium, and there is infection of the feather follicle epithelium. And from here, the virus starts replicating. It forms the intranuclear inclusion bodies also, and with it, there is formation of complete virus particle, which is shed off in the dander, in the feather, in the shed of keratinized feather follicle epithelial tissue. Okay. So from here, it goes to the it goes for the spread, lateral spread. Then some comments on pathogenesis of non-tumor diseases. Comments on pathogenesis of non-tumor diseases. So one important manifestation, which is not always seen, but sometimes, that this virus leads to atherosclerosis. This virus leads to atherosclerosis if the affected birds are given cholesterol rich diet. If the birds are given so why we will give cholesterol rich diet? The point is, when we are using the cheaper source of energy, fats, cheap fat as energy source, cholesterol rich fat, if we give animal origin fat to birds and the infection of Marek disease is there, then there is high probability of formation of atherosclerosis in the visceral organs. Atherosclerosis in the visceral organs, and it is associated with CD4 positive and CD8 positive cells infiltrating the intima of the affected blood vessel. The CD4 positive and CD8 positive T cells infiltrating the intima of the affected blood vessel. Hmm? Then neurological lesion complex. Neurological lesion complex. Neurological lesion complex. Okay, and we will discuss neurological lesion complex in next class. Okay. Uh, it is about to be 10 o'clock now. Any doubt till now? Any confusion? Yes? Anybody?
Sir,
Yes?
sir, actually, I wanted to ask about the uh, question that was given in exam.
Acha, all right. Which one?
Sir, the why RT-PCR is important in CIA diagnosis.
Why RT-PCR is important in C? No, it is not important in diagnosis of You can perform simple PCR also. It is a DNA virus. CIA is a DNA virus, circulating DNA virus. You can perform simple PCR. No charges here. The first transcript is no only that virus replication. There is no simple you have some and you perform the piece also. It doesn't at least sleep. Not yes. Actually, script uh, in the model. Hmm? We see in the uh, Marek's disease. Hmm? Till now, we have seen the virus replication, how virus replicates. Hmm? Virus replicates, but there is early productive restrictive infection. Then there is also a latent infection. And then latent infection can go by a second phase of cytolytic infection, or directly it may go for lymphoma development. Then there is productive cytolytic infection of feather follicle epithelium, from where the uh, completely formed infective virion particles are formed. So, keeping this in mind, uh, we have discussed one form of non-tumor disease, that was atherosclerosis, and now we go to the major clinical finding, major, which is through which we characterize the Marek's disease in field. That part we are going to discuss now. This atherosclerosis is rare and conditional, but neurological complex is found very, very frequently. Hmm. So, neurological disease complex or neurological lesion complex comprises of the transient paralysis. First important is transient paralysis. There are two types of transient paralysis: classical transient paralysis and acute transient paralysis. Transient means temporary. Classical transient paralysis and acute transient paralysis. Then there is also persistent neurological disease syndrome. Persistent neurological disease syndrome, and then a late paralysis syndrome, or simply we say late paralysis disease. So, classical transient paralysis, acute transient paralysis, persistent neurological disease syndrome, and late paralysis. So, first we discuss the classical transient paralysis. Uh, See, both transient paralysis actually arise from the brain. The major site of formation of this transient paralysis is the brain. Okay, and generally it is caused by the virulent strains. The very virulent strains, plus strains, they actually cause this transient paralysis. And the major mediator cell which spreads the virus on or which is the target of virus operate and attacking the nervous system, is the B cell. B cells are involved in this. So this classical transient paralysis is associated with the brain lesion, and that is the vasculitis. Vasculitis in brain. It occurs around a week after the infection. If we infect the birds with virulent strain after 1 week, this transient classical transient paralysis may occur, and it occurs because of vasculitis, the inflammation of blood vessels in the brain, which leads to leakage of proteins, especially albumin, from the blood into the vacuoles, formation of leakage of albumin from the blood vessels and in the ducts. This all leads to formation of vasogenic edema. This all leads to formation of vasogenic edema. Because of vasogenic edema, the the brain function, or I should say, there is pressure on the brain, and the bird starts showing neurological clinical signs. Because of pressure on the brain, the bird starts showing neurological clinical signs like paralysis. Okay. Then there is also the acute transient paralysis. Acute transient paralysis, and this is also associated with velogenic strains, very velogenic strains. And in this case, there is release of nitrous oxide, chemical mediator of inflammation, nitrous oxide. Especially in the cerebellum, nitrous oxide in the cerebellum. And because of this, there is once again edema in the region, vasodilatation and edema leading to paralysis. Vasodilatation and edema, which increases the pressure on the area, which reduces the function of the affected part, and we find the paralysis. So classical transient paralysis and acute transient paralysis we have seen. Then in persistent neurological disease, this is associated with very severe infiltration of tumorous lymphoblast into the gray matter. It is associated with very severe infiltration of lymphoblast into the gray matter. Gray matter is also called as neuropil. And because of this, there is malfunction of brain, and various different kinds of neurological disease appear. At the same point, when the lymphoblasts are infiltrating the brain, the lymphoma formation also takes place all over the body. And therefore, this persistent neurological disease and the formation of tumors coincide. At this point, also peripheral nerves are invaded by lymphoblast. And consequently, once even the bird recovers from this stage or does not go through this stage, neuropil is not infiltrated by lymphoblast, still the bird in later stages shows paralysis. So late paralysis because of infiltration of lymphoblast into the peripheral nerves supplying the body. Peripheral nerves supplying the body. Any confusion till now? Anybody wants to ask anything? Yes? Okay. Then some discussion on immunosuppression caused by Marek's disease. The basic reason for immunosuppression in Marek's disease is the cytolytic infection. Primary reason is the cytolytic infection. In the first productive restrictive cytolytic infection, the bursa, the thymus, etc. are affected, and there is loss of T cells and B cells. There is loss of T cells and B cells. In the second cytolytic infection, not only the epithelial origin organs, but also the lymphoid organs are affected. And now, once there is atrophy of all primary and secondary lymphoid organs, there is permanent immunosuppression. Bird permanent immunosuppression. So first cytolytic infection, second cytolytic infection. Third point is because of development of lymphomas. The lymphomas invade the all visceral organs, the all lymphoid organs, and they replace out normal tissue. So total body function is weak. Whatever remains in spleen, it is replaced by lymphoma. The liver is invaded by lymphomas. So liver is malfunctioning. So all parts of immunity are suppressed. So once there is second cytolytic infection and there is development of lymphomas, the bird never recovers the immunity. It is permanently immunosuppressed. Then we see the um, different types of the manifestation of this disease in the field. Hmm? Manifestation of disease in the field. So first type of the clinical manifestation, this disease pathological manifestation, this disease shows is called as classical form. Classical form, also called as neurolymphomatosis. Now, we have studied the basic pathogenesis regarding how the paralysis develops, this, that, everything happens. How the disease behaves clinically in the field or pathologically in the field. So, first one is classical form, also called as neurolymphomatosis. Neurolymphomatosis. In this, there is asymmetric paralysis of one or more limbs. There is asymmetrical paralysis of one or more limbs. Typically, vagus nerve is involved. Vagus nerve is involved. So there is dyspnea and crop dilatation. Dyspnea and crop dilatation. Hmm? On necropsy examination. Now see in classical form, we find that typical stretched leg position. In classical form, we find that typical stretched leg position. You will see that one leg is in front, one leg is in back, or both legs are split. Hmm? Thus, the bird is sitting on split legs, like that. So this on necropsy examination, we will find that peripheral nerve thickening is there. That especially we find that the nerve plexus, the brachial plexus and the sciatic plexus, the brachial plexus and the sciatic plexus, they appear asymmetrical. They appear asymmetrical. All right. The peripheral nerve definitely are thickened. Asymmetrical nerve plexus The skin also shows lymphomas. Skeletal muscles will also show lymphomas. And visceral organs will also show presence of lymphomas. But not extensive, but yes, definitely lymphomas will be present. Say, visceral organs means all visceral organs, all parts of GIT, all reproductive organs and glands will show the infiltration by lymphomas. Then there is acute form. Acute form, also called as epidemic form. Epidemic form. Now there is this happens in the susceptible flock. Susceptible flock where the the antibodies are not there or vaccination was not there, and management is poor. So mortality is very high. Mortality is very high. It will reach up to 80%. It will reach up to 80%. Bird will show depression and paralysis. You can correlate this point with the acute and classical transient paralysis. We can correlate with this. And generally, this acute form occurs before the classical form. If the bird survives this this acute form, at some point they will start showing the classical form. Starts way before the classical form. The most affected age group is 4 to 8 weeks. hmm, is 4 to 8 weeks, and the organs show infiltration of lymphoblast in their parenchyma. The lymphoma may or may not form. Lymphoma may or may not occur. Yes, typically lymphomas may occur in some organs, liver, spleen, etc. But if we go for histopathology, we will definitely find the lymphoblast infiltrating the different organs. However, in classical form, the fully formed lymphomas are visible over the visceral organs. Okay. Another manifestation what we see in field is ocular lymphomatosis. Ocular lymphomatosis, the iris is infiltrated by lymphoblast. The iris of eye is infiltrated by lymphoblast, and it turns gray. So it is sometimes called as gray eyes, gray eye disease also. The iris, which is generally yellowish, it turns gray colored, and the pupil become uneven in size and blindness develops. Pupil become uneven in size and blindness develop in the birds. As I have discussed the cutaneous lymphomatosis, the in the cutaneous lymphomatosis, the major site of lymphoma formation is around the feather follicle. Around the feather follicle. All right, that is important part to be discussed here. The gross pathology overall. Whether it is the acute form or classical form or anything, the organ wise, we will discuss the gross pathology. So nerves, especially the peripheral nerves, show loss of cross striations, grayish color, grayish or yellowish discoloration. In fact, if you see a nerve is glistening white, shining white. It turns gray or yellowish. There is loss of cross striations. They appear swollen edematous. They appear swollen and edematous. And the nerves show unevenness and asymmetrical on both right and left side. Nerves show unevenness in themselves and asymmetrical shape on both right and left side. Typically, if I want to search where the unevenness is there, the earliest part showing it will be the brachial plexus and the sciatic plexus. I will open the bird in such a way so that I expose the brachial and sciatic plexus and and observe the unevenness in that. Then visceral organs show lymphomas, visceral organs, the reproductive organs, ovary, the testes, the visceral organs like liver, spleen, the mesentery, the GIT, everywhere, even the lungs, everywhere the lymphomas form. Pancreas, adrenal gland, thymus, bursa, everywhere the the lymphomas may form. And there are two types of lymphomas. There are two types of lymphomas. In visceral organ, it may appear as diffuse enlargement. Okay. Simply the liver appears discolored, uneven, and enlarged. There may not be a small or round or even large circumscribed lymphoma. The visceral organ simply appears enlarged, and sometimes multiple times of its original size. Hmm, 2 times, 3 times, like that also it is enlarged. It appears grayish, discolored, and also uneven many times. Some very good specimen are there in our museum, if you remember. Then the other one appear as nodules that typically we discuss. It's a nodular growth. It's a round nodular growth, variable in size from few millimeter, from 1 to 2 millimeter to more than few millimeters, up to a centimeter large also. These are the typical lymphomas what we see. So in Marex, we see two types of lymphomatosis in the visceral organs. One is diffuse enlargement because of lymphoma infiltration. Organ simply enlarges, and on histopathology, we will see that lymphoma is there. Or by gross cutting, we will see that small white foci are forming. Another one is formation of nodular lymphoma, nodule-like lymphoma. Especially it is very typically seen in liver and spleen. The lymphomas may also form on heart and lead to cardiac failure, acute cardiac failure. Hmm? Lymphomas are also seen in skin and muscle. I have already told you. Eye, especially the this gray eye disease, what we call gray eye disease. Hmm? In brain also, uh, the typical lymphoma is not seen definitely, but sometimes the meninges may show presence of small nodule. Very rarely, meninges may show presence of small nodule. Okay. Brain, it is generally inside the neuropil. It is diagnosed only on the histopathology. Histopathology, the nerves show two types of lesion. Histopathological lesions in nerves are two types of lesions. First lesion is called as type A lesion. Type A lesions are neoplastic lesions where there is neoplastic pleomorph infiltration. Neoplastic pleomorphoblast infiltration around the nerve. There is demyelination, Schwann cell proliferation. There is demyelination and Schwann cell proliferation. And in type B lesions, which are inflammatory lesions. Type B lesions are inflammatory lesions. So there will be diffuse or light to moderate infiltration by small lymphocytes and plasma cells. Now, there is no lymphoblast, lymphocyte and plasma cells with presence of edema. With presence of edema. Diffuse light to moderate infiltration by small lymphocytes and plasma cells and edema. Hmm? And in some cases, not very frequently, but sometimes demyelination and Schwann cell proliferation. Demyelination and Schwann cell proliferation. Both lesions of type A and type B can occur in same bird and also in same nerve at some part. Okay. The type A lesion of infiltration cells or type B lesion of inflammatory infiltration and edema. They can occur in same bird, even in same nerve at some part. Hmm. The brain show the presence of lymphoproliferative lesions, the neuropil, the, the cerebellum. Hmm. The there is inflammatory lesions of perivascular cuffing, gliosis, vasculitis and edema. Vasculitis and edema. Visceral organs. Visceral organs show very typical, very typical lymphoma lesions. Whether it is a uh, uh, well-formed lymphoma or diffuse enlargement, the microscopic lesions are very similar. The visceral organs will show presence of lymphomas which may be very large or very small. The lymphoma comprises of, this is very typical, please remember, the lymphoma comprises of the neoplastic cells, the transformed CD4 plus, CD8 plus cells, even B cells, whatever the transformed cells are there, those transformed cells, and associated inflammatory cells. There is also a good number of inflammatory cells. There is also a good number of inflammatory cells. So these lymphomas in the visceral organs show a heterogeneous pleomorphic population of cells. Heterogeneous pleomorphic population of cells. In in the Marek's disease, there is a tendency of lymphoblast to infiltrate the parenchyma. To infiltrate the parenchyma. Apart from forming a restricted area of lymphoma, they also tend to infiltrate the organ, wherever the organ is there, the lung, the heart, everywhere. They tend to infiltrate the organ and form a aggregates of lymphoid proliferation or lymphoblast proliferation. In feather follicle epithelium, also, there is infiltration by lymphoblast. There is there is inflammatory and proliferative changes in the feather follicle epithelium. Inflammatory and proliferative changes in the feather follicle epithelium, and the it leads to formation of nodular growth. Leads to formation of nodular growth, and on histopathology we also see intranuclear inclusion bodies, feather follicle epithelium. Intranuclear inclusion bodies in the feather follicle epithelium. The eye in ocular lymphomatosis, the eye shows mononuclear infiltration of iris. The iris is infiltrated by mononuclear cells and with lot of lymphomas. One of the important microscopic diagnostic technique is demonstration of MATSA. Demonstration of MATSA by immunohistochemistry or by immunofluorescence. The Marek's lymphoma shows cells positive for MATSA. MATSA, Marek's disease associated tumor surface antigen. Marek's disease associated tumor surface antigen. Those cells which are transformed neoplastic cells because of Marek's disease, they show presence of this surface marker on their surface. Surface marker for Marek's disease. Marek's disease tumor associated surface antigen MATSA. It can be demonstrated immunofluorescence and immunohistochemistry utilizing specific antibodies. Okay, diagnosis is performed by virus isolation in susceptible chicks, in susceptible chicks and cell cultures. The best sample for diagnosis are the lymphomas and feather follicle epithelium. The best sample for diagnosis are lymphomas, and for isolation, for PCR, for anything, they are the feather follicle epithelium and lymphomas. Then from feather follicle epithelium, we can also go for antigen detection. Antigen detection, say AGID, say ELISA, AGPT, sorry, not AGID, AGPT. No, it is AGID only, but AGPT, specifically AGPT and ELISA. And they are very useful for survey of Marek disease in field. They are very useful for survey of Marek's disease in field. feather follicle epithelium, and then from live birds, specifically from live birds. Then lymphomas are also utilized for ELISA and HEPT to detect the antigen. To detect the antigen. Then the TCR is very useful. Electron microscopy is very useful. Then immunohistochemistry and immunofluorescent test. They like fluorescent antibody test. Immunohistochemistry and fluorescent antibody test to demonstrate MATSA on the lymphoma cells. To demonstrate MATSA on the lymphoma cells. MATSA, once again, Marek's disease associated tumor surface antigen. Okay. Histopathology, the major diagnostic point is the lymphoma will have heterogeneous cell population. Lymphoma will have heterogeneous cell population. The the differential diagnosis is to be made. Differential diagnosis is to be made with the uh, the nervous diseases affect showing where the nervous signs are very prominent, like botulism, like Newcastle disease, where torticollis paralysis is there, botulism paralysis is there, vitamin deficiency, B1, B2, vitamin E deficiency, where the paralysis is shown. Hmm. Then diseases where the lymphoma and nodules form. Diseases where lymphomas and nodules form, like the avian leukosis complex, the Jayer's disease, polygranuloma, Jayer's disease, the say, uh, for example, salmonellosis, where the mononuclear granuloma is formed. So such diseases, and definitely aspergillosis. We will discuss later on. Aspergillosis, where the nodular growth are formed on the body. So it has to be differentially diagnosed from this disease. So here we conclude this chapter. Any doubt till now? Anything you want to ask?
Sir, can you please repeat the type B and in brain what type of lesions it shows?
Brain shows two types of major two types of lesions. One is the infiltration. One is the inflammatory change. Inflammatory. Generally, it is vasculitis. If you see classical transient paralysis and acute transient paralysis, both are due to vasogenic edema. Vasogenic edema, blood, I should say, vasculitis. In the classical transient paralysis, there is leakage of protein, and because the capillaries become dilated and leaky. And in acute transient paralysis, they have found that there is extensive of the neurotransmitter NO nitrous oxide, which leads to the dilatation and opening up of the capillaries, and sudden edema takes place. Okay. Actually, another type of lesion, there is development of, or should say, there is infiltration of the um, lymphoblast cells in the neuropil. Hmm? Lymphoblast cell in the neuropil, and because of that, the brain function becomes impaired permanently, and and the bird, till it survives, keeps on showing the uh, the neurological disease. So if we see, there are two types of major lesions. One is inflammatory, another is the lymphomatosis. And inflammatory lesions also coincide with formation of perivascular cuffing, gliosis, vasculitis, edema, and demyelination. The demyelination is rare, okay, rare, but perivascular cuffing, gliosis, vasculitis, and edema. These are the major inflammatory change. And then in lymphoproliferative changes, there is infiltration by lymphoblast in the neuropil. All right. Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Okay, then let us start with the the avian leukosis complex. Avian leukosis complex. Avian leukosis complex comprises of retroviral associated diseases which lead to formation of tumors. Retroviral associated disease leading to formation of tumors. The disease was first reported in 1868 and was called as lymphosarcomatosis. Lymphosarcoma, tumors of lymphoid origin, hmm, called as lymphosarcomatosis. The family is Retroviridae, and virus genus is Alpha retrovirus, and virus species is avian leukosis virus. Avian leukosis virus. There is also another Rous sarcoma virus, um, which is also almost similar condition, similar disease it forms, Rous sarcoma virus and avian leukosis virus. It is single-stranded RNA virus, single-stranded enveloped RNA virus. Virus is enveloped and there is single-stranded RNA. It is a retrovirus, so it is having an enzyme, reverse transcriptase. Reverse transcriptase enzyme, and with this enzyme in the cell, from this RNA, DNA is synthesized. Complementary DNA to this RNA is synthesized. Reverse transcriptase enzyme. In fact, whatever reverse transcription PCR what we are doing, it's all started with the isolation of this reverse transcriptase enzyme from the virus infected cells. That's how they started reverse transcription PCR. Or later on, genetic engineering helped it to synthesize in vitro. All right, not in vitro means synthetically. This newly synthesized DNA gets integrated in the host genome. Gets integrated into the host genome. All right. Now this RNA of this virus has got three major genes. There is another part also, but there are three major genes. Protease. GAG, Pro, and third one is POL, 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 or the reverse transcriptase. POL is also called as reverse transcriptase, or I should say RNA dependent DNA polymerase. Reverse transcriptase is RNA dependent DNA polymerase. From RNA, it can synthesize DNA. So polymerase, so POL, GAG gap, GAG, group antigen, group specific antigen, protease, POL, reverse transcriptase or RNA dependent DNA polymerase. Now, this part gets integrated into the host genome. Sometimes what happens is this one of this gene is replaced by an oncogene while defective replication of virus is taking place. While defective replication of virus is taking place, one of this gene is replaced by host oncogene. RC, C sarcoma, cellular sarcoma, C sarcoma. Okay. Now, when it is incorporated in the virus, now it is called as VONC, viral oncogene. VONC, viral oncogene. So, once this active particle is found, it cannot lead to uptake in the host cell. It goes there, it forms the DNA. This DNA gets integrated into the host genome. But one of the important gene is missing. So now this virus cannot form the productive infection. From that, productive infection cannot take place. But it introduces into the host genome a oncogene, VONC, which was originally CONC, has now become VONC. And it tends to express this oncogene. It tends to express this oncogene, and that is why the tumor formation takes place. And that is why formation takes place. Those viruses which are uh, having no VONC, they are called as slow transforming virus. Transformation means no neoplastic transformation. They remain integrated into the host genome. They have one stage of latent infection. In that latent infection, they tend to slowly transform the cell into a neoplastic cell. Okay. There is specific pathogenesis where they are integrated. I'll definitely come back to this both pathogenesis. Okay. They are called as slow transforming virus, while those viruses that contain VONC, they are acutely transforming virus. Those viruses which have VONC, they are called as acutely transforming virus. Hmm? All right. I'll come back to all these things once we go ahead with this chapter. Hmm? So, if I first we will see the transmission of this disease. This disease is transmitted by uh, there is horizontal transmission by close contact between the birds. By close contact between the birds. This virus is also transmitted by artificial insemination. This virus is also transmitted by artificial insemination and also vertically transmitted from hen to chicks. It is also transmitted hen to chicks. There are two types of viruses. Exogenous virus, which where the virus forms the infective particle. Exogenous virus, where virus forms the infective particle. And then there is endogenous virus. Endogenous virus will not form the infective particle but remains integrated in host genome. Endogenous virus remains integrated in host genome. And the transmission of endogenous virus is very typically by the vertical transmission. It is vertical transmission as well as by the artificial insemination or natural service also. Artificial insemination or natural service also. That's how it is transmitted. There are strain classification. According to the envelope, the strains have been classified as A, B, C, D, E, and J. A, B, C, D, E, and J. Exogenous subgroups A, B, C, D, E, and J. Out of all these, J is causing havoc in the field. J is one of the most frequently encountered strain. Then F, G, H, I are endogenous subgroups. They remain integrated in the host genome and they they proliferate only when a complete virion comes. Later on, I'll discuss about this point. Later on, I'll discuss about this point. Okay. The uh, according to pathogenicity, the virus has been classified as avian leukosis virus or lymphoid leukosis virus. Actually, avian leukosis, the total complex is there. Prototype is lymphoid leukosis virus. According to pathogenicity, they have been classified as lymphoid leukosis virus, avian erythroblastosis virus, avian erythroblastosis virus, avian myeloblastosis virus, avian myeloblastosis virus, and avian sarcoma virus. Avian sarcoma virus. All right. Although lymphoid leukosis is known to cause lymphoid tumor, erythroblastosis type of tumors, myelocytoma tumors by myeloblastosis, but it is not necessary. Any strain can cause any type of tumor. Why it is called erythroblastosis? Because this tumor is seen more by this virus. This virus causes mostly erythroblastosis. It does not mean it cannot cause lymphoid leukosis or lymphoid lymphoma formation. Yes, it can lead to lymphoma formation also. Or I should say, the lymphoid leukosis virus cannot form the erythroblastosis or myeloblastosis, means myelocytoma. It can also do it. In fact, this ALCJ strain is something which can cause any type of tumor. It can be anything. It can be it can be classified as lymphoid leukosis also, lymphoid leukosis virus also. It can be classified as erythroblastosis virus also. All right. But this pathological classification is based on which is the typical tumor associated with that strain. Okay, that is simple point. Hmm. Then the according to the uh, the the speed of neoplasm formation, there are two types of virus. The classification is, one is acute transforming virus and one is slow transforming virus. Acute transforming virus, they contain a V-onc, they contain a viral oncogene. They are defective virus. Acute transforming virus are defective virus. They can induce formation of tumors within few days or weeks, hmm, and they are defective virus, genetically defective. One of their important gene has been replaced by a viral oncogene. They have acquired from the host cell an oncogene and given up their own important gene. So they contain a defective V-onc. These viruses and cannot form, cannot form a new virus particle. They simply cause tumor. But in that tumor, if there is infection by, if there is infection by a completely formed virus, co-infection, concurrent infection, that means two viruses are infecting now. In that tumor or in that bird, if there is infection by a completely formed virus, suddenly the replication starts taking place. And now the defective and fully formed particle both are formed. Defective and means some variant particles will contain only these three types of defective genes. No, only uh, the defective genome, and some will contain a complete genome. Okay. Then second, in this classification, second one is slow transforming virus. Slow transforming virus do not contain viral oncogene. They do not contain viral oncogene, but when they get inserted in the host genome, when they get inserted into the host genome, if they are placed nearby an oncogene, cellular oncogene, if they are inserted nearby a cellular oncogene, now they promote the expression of cellular oncogene. They induce promotion of the expression of the cellular oncogene. So slowly, after some time of infection, now the neoplastic uh, transformation of infected cells starts taking place. Hmm. So these are the classification of this virus. Hmm. The host range, the experimental host uh, include chicken. Natural and experimental host, major host is chicken actually. Chicken shows mm, typically this lymphoid leukosis. It has also been reported in pheasants, partridges, and quails. Pheasants, partridges, and quails. Rous sarcoma virus has a wider host range. Rous sarcoma has wider range of means forming the disease, typical disease in chicken, pheasants, guinea fowl, ducks, pigeon, quail. turkey, some partridges also, chicken, pigeons, guinea fowl, ducks, pigeon, Japanese quail, turkeys, and it has also been found to infect monkeys. Rouse sarcoma virus can also infect primates, monkeys also. Hmm? Uh, the ducks show congenital infection with subgroup C, that A, B, C, D, and C, and it leads to a wasting disease post hatching. It leads to a wasting disease in ducklings post hatching. ALVJ infects chicken also, and turkeys are also very susceptible. For ALVJ, turkeys are also very susceptible. Hmm. So, any doubt till now? Anything? Anything you want to ask?
Sir, slow transmission. Can you please?
In slow transforming virus, the virus particle is complete. It can replicate properly. It can form a very good new infective particle. But it causes oncogenesis by the promoter insertion. Promoter insertion. Promoter insertion means it gets inserted if there is always a chance, if it gets inserted just above the oncogene of the cell, host cell, oncogene of the host cell. Now this virus will replicate. Now how the virus has to replicate? Virus has to induce the replication of its gene. So when it induces the replication of its own self, it also induces replication of the the genes which are nearby this virus. Okay, it not only expresses itself, but it has got no control. It will also express the genes nearby it. Okay, especially downstream genes, after coming this insertion. Suppose one of them is an oncogene, one of them is an cellular oncogene. So now that cellular oncogene also gets expression, uncontrolled expression. Cell was controlling it. Now cell is unable to control it. So this oncogene keeps on expressing, and cells start showing the uncontrolled proliferation, and over the time it shows the tumor progression and neoplastic transformation, complete new uncontrolled neoplastic transformation, and therefore lymphoma starts appearing. All right, is it clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Anything else, anybody? Yes. Yes, no. Okay. Then I conclude this class here itself. Tomorrow we will try to finish this, and then we will